The snow fell like shattered glass on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, and Nola Baptiste was about to lose everything she had fought 3 years to build. She stood in the alley behind Eclipse, the most exclusive lounge in New York, holding a black trash bag filled with her belongings while her former manager locked the door in her face. It was Christmas Eve, 11:47 p.m., and the temperature had dropped to 15 degrees, but the coldest thing in that alley wasn't the weather. It was the smile on Vivian Sterling's face as she turned the deadbolt. "You really thought you belonged here, didn't you?" Vivian said through the glass, her breath fogging the window, her diamond necklace catching the light from the street lamp. Nola's hands shook, not from cold yet, but from rage she couldn't afford to release. "I worked every shift you gave me. I covered for you when you were late. I never complained." Vivian laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "And that's exactly why you're fired, sweetheart. You made me look bad. The owner noticed you." She leaned closer to the glass. "Silas Park doesn't notice the help. But he noticed you. And I will not be upstaged by some scholarship girl playing waitress. Before this moment gets worse, let me tell you, sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, even when it feels like you're being destroyed. And if you stay with me, you'll see how a single night can burn down an empire and build a new one from the ashes." Nola pressed her palm against the door. "Vivian, please. My brother's medication, the payment is due tomorrow. I need this job." Vivian's smile widened. "Should have thought about that before you got too pretty, too smart, and too close to my territory." She turned and walked away, her heels echoing on the marble floor inside, leaving Nola standing in the snow with nothing but a trash bag and a choice: collapse or survive. That's when the black Mercedes pulled into the alley. Nola didn't move. She'd seen enough luxury cars in this neighborhood to know they didn't stop for people like her. But this one did. The engine cut. The driver's door opened. And a man stepped out who looked like he'd been carved from midnight and winter itself. Silas Park was 6'3", wearing a charcoal wool coat that probably cost more than Nola's entire year of rent. And his eyes, dark, unreadable, dangerously calm, locked onto her face with the intensity of someone who'd just found something he didn't know he was looking for. "You're the one who served me the whiskey an hour ago," he said. His voice was low, controlled, with the faintest edge of an accent that told stories of soul and secrets. Nola straightened her spine. "Yes, sir. I was. Silas stepped closer. "Why are you standing in an alley in the snow with a trash bag?" "Because I've been fired." Nola's voice didn't waver. If she was going down, she'd go down with dignity. Vivian Sterling decided I wasn't a good fit anymore. Something flickered in Silas's eyes. Not sympathy. Something colder. Something lethal. Vivian Sterling doesn't have the authority to fire anyone. Nola blinked. "She's the general manager." "She's an employee," Silas corrected, his jaw tightening. "I own Eclipse. I own this building. I own the block." The world tilted. Nola had served the owner. She'd made eye contact with him, smiled, recommended the Macallan 25 because he looked like a man who appreciated things that took time to perfect. And Vivian had seen it. "I didn't know," Nola whispered. "I didn't know you owned it." Silas studied her face, and for 3 long seconds, the only sound was the wind howling between the buildings and the distant hum of the city that never slept. Then he pulled out his phone. "Get back inside." "I can't." "She locked," I said. Silas repeated, his voice dropping into a register that made even the snow seem to pause. "Get back inside." He tapped his screen once. Inside Eclipse, every lock in the building disengaged simultaneously. Click, click, click. Nola stared at the door as it swung open on its own, revealing the warm golden glow of the lounge beyond. Silas walked past her, his shoulder brushing hers, the scent of cedar and something darker, gunpowder, maybe, or old money and older violence, trailing behind him. "Follow me," he said without looking back. "We're going to have a conversation with Miss Sterling." Nola hesitated for half a heartbeat. Then she dropped the trash bag and followed the most dangerous man she'd ever met back into the fire. What she didn't know yet was that Silas Park wasn't just a bar owner. He was the silent king of the Korean underworld in New York, a man who controlled everything from shipping routes to politicians, and he'd just made a decision that would start a war. But that was only the beginning. Vivian Sterling was pouring herself a victory champagne when the lights in Eclipse dimmed, then blazed back to full brightness, and every screen in the lounge, the TVs behind the bar, the digital menus, even her personal tablet, displayed the same two words in blood-red text, owner present. She froze, the bottle tilting, golden liquid spilling onto the marble counter. The security system only did that for one person. She turned slowly, and there he was. Silas Park stood in the center of the main floor with Nola Baptiste beside him, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees despite the roaring fireplace. "Mr. Park," Vivian said, her voice climbing an octave into false brightness. "I wasn't expecting you back tonight. I thought you'd left for the evening." "I had," Silas said, removing his gloves with slow, deliberate precision. "But then I found one of my employees locked outside in a blizzard on Christmas Eve. So I came back." Vivian's smile twitched. There must be some misunderstanding. Nola was let go for policy violations. "What violations?" Silas asked. His tone was conversational, almost friendly. That made it more terrifying. Vivian glanced at Nola, then back at Silas. "Insubordination. Failure to meet dress code standards. Inappropriate fraternization with clients." "Interesting," Silas said. He walked to the bar, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood. "Because I've reviewed the security footage from the past 3 months. Every shift Nola worked is recorded. Would you like to watch it with me?" Vivian's face went pale beneath her makeup. "That won't be necessary." "I think it is." Silas tapped the bar twice, and the largest screen flickered to life. The footage began playing. It showed Nola arriving early for every shift, staying late, cleaning tables other waitresses ignored, helping the kitchen staff when they were slammed, never once on her phone, never once sitting down. Then the footage switched to Vivian. It showed her arriving late, leaving early, screaming at a busboy until he cried, pocketing cash from the register, and in one particularly damning clip, pouring a drink on Nola's uniform and laughing when Nola had to work the rest of the night in a stained shirt. "Still want to talk about policy violations?" Silas asked, his voice soft as a knife sliding between ribs. Vivian's hands clenched into fists. "She doesn't belong here. Look at her. She's not Eclipse material." "And what exactly is Eclipse material?" Silas stepped closer. "Because from where I stand, Nola is the only person in this building who understands what service actually means." Vivian caught herself, but not fast enough. "She's what?" Silas's eyes went black. "Say it. Finish this sentence." Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Nola spoke instead, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "She's going to say I don't fit because I'm black. Because I grew up in the Bronx, not the Hamptons. Because my last name isn't Sterling or Vanderbilt or Park." She looked directly at Vivian. "But you didn't fire me for any of that. You fired me because Silas smiled at me when I recommended his drink. And you can't stand the idea that someone like me could be seen by someone like him." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes explosions. Vivian lunged. Not physically, but verbally, her voice rising into a shriek. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I built this place. I made Eclipse what it is. And you think you can waltz in here with your sob story about your brother's medication and your sad eyes, and just take what's mine?" "Mine," Silas repeated. His voice was a whip crack. "You don't own anything here, Vivian. Not the chairs. Not the glasses. Not the air you're breathing. I've tolerated your cruelty because you were efficient. But efficiency doesn't excuse racism, and it sure as hell doesn't excuse locking an employee outside to freeze." He pulled out his phone again. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." "You can't." "Fire me," Vivian screamed. "My father is Lawrence Sterling. He owns half the real estate in this city. He'll bury you." Silas smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Your father is a landlord who owes me $3 million in protected loans. If you'd like me to call in that debt tonight, keep talking." Vivian's face crumbled. She looked at Nola with pure, distilled hatred. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you've just started." She grabbed her coat and stormed toward the exit, but before she reached the door, she turned one last time. "Enjoy your little victory, Nola. But you should ask your new savior what he really does for a living. Ask him about the shipments. Ask him about the missing accountant from last year. Ask him why half the NYPD won't touch him." Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her so hard the chandeliers swayed. Nola stood in the center of Eclipse, suddenly very aware that she was alone with a man she didn't actually know. Silas turned to face her. "She's right about one thing," he said quietly. "You should ask me what I do." Nola met his gaze. "I don't care what you do. You didn't let me freeze. That's all that matters tonight. And tomorrow? Tomorrow I'll figure out who you really are." Silas laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his entire face. "Fair enough. But right now, you're going to sit down, drink something warm, and tell me about your brother." "Why?" "Because," Silas said, walking behind the bar and pulling out 2 glasses, "I just made you an enemy, and I don't leave my people unprotected. I'm not your people. You are now." What Nola didn't know was that Vivian Sterling was already making phone calls, and what Silas didn't know was that Nola's brother's illness wasn't just expensive. It was connected to something Silas had destroyed years ago, and when the truth came out, it would test everything. Silas poured 2 fingers of whiskey into each glass and slid one across the bar to Nola. She didn't touch it. "I don't drink on the job," she said. "You're not on the job," Silas replied. "You're unemployed, remember? You just rehired me." "Did I?" Silas raised an eyebrow. "I fired Vivian. I never said you were coming back as a waitress." Nola's stomach dropped. "Then what am I?" "That depends," Silas said, taking a sip of his whiskey. "Tell me about your brother." Nola's fingers curled around the glass. The warmth bled through the crystal. "His name is Ezra. He's 14. He has a rare autoimmune condition that attacks his nervous system. The treatment costs $32,000 every 3 months, and insurance won't cover it because they've labeled it experimental." "How long have you been paying for it?" 3 years. On a waitress salary. On 3 jobs, Nola corrected. "I worked here, at night. I do bookkeeping for a law firm during the day. I drive for a rideshare company on weekends." Silas set his glass down. "You're working yourself to death." "He's my baby brother," Nola said simply. "Our parents died when he was 9. I'm all he has." "Where's the next payment due?" "Tomorrow. Christmas Day. The clinic doesn't care about holidays." Silas pulled out his phone, typed something, and set it face down on the bar. "It's handled." Nola stared at him. "What's handled?" "The payment. The next one. And every one after that for the next 5 years." Nola's heart stopped. "You can't. That's over $500,000. "I can, and I did." Silas leaned forward. "I don't make gestures, Nola. I make investments. You're smart, you're loyal, and you just stood up to a woman who could have destroyed your life. I need people like you." "Doing what?" Nola asked, her voice trembling somewhere between hope and terror. "Whatever you're good at," Silas said. "You mentioned bookkeeping. My operations need someone who understands numbers and knows how to keep their mouth shut. You'll work directly for me. The pay is $200,000 a year, plus benefits, plus your brother's medical expenses fully covered." Nola couldn't breathe. It was too much. Too fast. Too good to be real. "What's the catch?" "The catch," Silas said, his eyes never leaving hers, "is that the world I operate in doesn't play by normal rules. You'll see things that would make most people run. You'll know things that could get you killed if you talk to the wrong person. And once you're in, there's no easy way out." "Are you in the Mafia?" Nola asked bluntly. Silas smiled. "I prefer the term independent contractor, but yes. I run the Korean network in New York. Shipping, gambling, protection. I don't touch drugs, I don't touch trafficking, and I don't hurt civilians. But I'm not a good man, Nola. I'm just better than most of the alternatives." Nola picked up the whiskey and downed it in one burning swallow. When do I start? Right now, Silas said. Because Vivian just walked into her father's office, and he's about to make a very stupid mistake. As if summoned by prophecy, the front door of Eclipse exploded inward. Not metaphorically, actually exploded. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces as 3 men in black suits stormed in, guns drawn. Silas Park, the lead man shouted. He was tall, red-faced, with the kind of entitled rage that came from a lifetime of buying his way out of consequences. Lawrence Sterling, you think you can fire my daughter and threaten my family? You think you're untouchable? Silas didn't flinch. He stepped in front of Nola, his body becoming a shield. I think you just committed armed assault on my property, Lawrence. That's a felony. Want to add more? I want you on your knees, Lawrence snarled. I want you begging. Then you're going to be disappointed, Silas said. He raised his left hand and snapped his fingers once. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Within 3 seconds, every exit sealed. Steel shutters dropped over the windows. The lights dimmed to a predatory red. And from the shadows of the lounge, 6 figures emerged. They moved like smoke, dressed in black tactical gear, faces covered, weapons drawn. Silas's personal security team. Lawrence's bravado crumbled. You can't do this. I have connections. I'll have the police here in 5 minutes. No, you won't, Silas said calmly. Because the police commissioner is currently enjoying Christmas Eve at his daughter's house in Connecticut, and the deputy commissioner owes me a favor that involves his son's gambling debts. No one is coming for you, Lawrence. He stepped forward. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to pull every asset you have out of anything connected to me. And you're going to tell your daughter that if she comes near Nola Baptiste again, I will personally ensure that the IRS discovers the $15 million you've hidden in offshore accounts. Lawrence's face went purple. You're bluffing. Silas pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward Lawrence. It showed a bank statement. Account number, balance, everything. Lawrence's secret account, laid bare. Am I? The 3 men with Lawrence looked at each other, then slowly lowered their guns. They weren't stupid. They knew when they'd lost. Lawrence backed toward the door, his hands shaking. This isn't over, Park. You've made an enemy tonight. Good, Silas said. I was getting bored. Lawrence fled, his men following. The shutters lifted. The lights returned to normal. Eclipse was silent except for the crackling fire. Nola stood frozen, her mind trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Silas turned to her. Still want the job? Nola looked at the shattered glass on the floor, the scorch marks on the walls, the 6 silent soldiers who'd appeared from nowhere, and the man who'd just dismantled a millionaire's life in under 5 minutes. Yes, she said, but I have one condition. Name it. Don't lie to me. Ever. If I'm going to work for you, if I'm going to trust you with my brother's life, I need to know you'll always tell me the truth, even when it's ugly. Silas extended his hand. Deal. Nola shook it. His grip was warm, firm, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone. But what neither of them knew was that Vivian Sterling wasn't finished, and her next move wouldn't involve guns or threats. It would involve something far more dangerous. The truth about how Ezra got sick in the first place. Christmas morning broke over New York in shades of gray and gold, and Nola woke up in a penthouse she didn't recognize. She sat up fast, heart hammering, memories flooding back. Eclipse, the explosion, Silas, the job offer, and then exhaustion hitting her so hard she'd barely made it into the car before passing out. Now she was in a bedroom that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets, wearing clothes she definitely hadn't put on herself. She heard voices in the hallway. Mail. Low. Urgent. Nola grabbed the robe hanging on the bedpost and crept to the door, opening it just enough to listen. You're telling me Vivian Sterling has the medical records? That was Silas, his voice stripped of its usual calm. Not just Vivian, a second voice replied. Deeper. Older. Her father hired a private investigator. They pulled everything. Hospital admissions, pharmacy records, the whole timeline. And boss, it traces back. To what? Silence. Then, to the chemical fire. The warehouse in the Bronx. 6 years ago, Nola's blood turned to ice. The warehouse fire. The night that had destroyed her neighborhood, sent dozens to the hospital, and left her baby brother with a compromised immune system that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The night that had started everything. That warehouse was clean, Silas said, but his voice carried a tension Nola hadn't heard before. We shut down the smuggling route 2 months before the fire. I personally made sure there were no chemicals stored on site. That's not what the records show, the other voice said. Sterling found the manifest. 3 containers of industrial solvents, unregistered, left behind when we pulled out. The fire started because someone torched the building to cover the evidence, and the chemicals turned it into a toxin cloud. Who torched it? We don't know, but the timing suggests it was someone trying to erase our connection to the property. And now Sterling has proof that we own the warehouse, proof that the chemicals were ours, and proof that Ezra Baptiste was admitted to the ER the same night with acute chemical exposure. Nola stopped breathing. Silas. The warehouse belonged to Silas. The chemicals that had destroyed her brother's health, that had forced her to work 3 jobs, that had stolen their entire future, they belonged to the man who'd just promised to save them. She pushed the door open and walked into the hallway. Both men turned. Silas stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, looking like a king surveying his kingdom. The other man was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a scar running down his jawline. Nola, Silas said. His voice was careful. Too careful. You're awake. Tell me it's not true, Nola said. Her voice shook. Tell me you didn't poison my brother. Silas didn't look away. Didn't flinch. I own the warehouse. I didn't order the fire. I didn't know about the chemicals left behind. But yes, Nola. Ultimately, it traces back to me. The world tilted. Nola grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. You knew. Last night, when I told you about Ezra, you knew. I suspected, Silas admitted. The timeline matched. But I didn't have confirmation until an hour ago. And you didn't tell me. I was waiting until I had all the facts. Liar, Nola screamed. The word tore out of her like a wound opening. You said you'd never lie to me. You shook my hand. And this whole time you knew you were the reason he's dying. Silas took a step forward. Nola, don't. She held up her hand. Don't come near me. The older man cleared his throat. Miss Baptiste, I understand you're upset, but we have a bigger problem. Lawrence Sterling is planning to leak this information to the media. If he does, it won't just destroy Silas. It'll destroy you too. The story will be Mafia boss bribes victim's sister to keep her quiet. Your brother's medical privacy will be shredded. Your name will be everywhere. Let it, Nola said. I don't care. You should, the man said. Because Sterling isn't stopping there. He's also threatening to cut off the payment we made to the clinic. He has connections with the medical board. He can make sure your brother never gets treated again anywhere in the country. Nola felt like she was drowning. Why? Why does he hate me this much? Because you're the weapon, Silas said quietly. He doesn't care about you or Ezra. He cares about destroying me. And you're the perfect ammunition. Nola looked at him. This man who'd saved her from freezing, who'd defended her, who'd promised her the world, and who'd also poisoned her brother and lied about it. I want to leave, she said. I want out of this building, out of this deal, out of everything. If you walk out that door, Silas said, Sterling will leak the story within an hour. By tonight, your brother's clinic will drop him, and you'll be unemployed, unemployable, and famous for all the wrong reasons. Then what do you suggest? Nola asked bitterly. I suggest, Silas said, his eyes hard as winter stone, we destroy Lawrence Sterling before he destroys us. Nola laughed, a broken sound. How? You said yourself he has proof. He has proof of negligence, Silas corrected. Not intent. And I have proof of something far worse. He nodded to the older man, who pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Nola. The screen showed a document. A contract. This, Silas said, is an agreement Lawrence Sterling signed 8 years ago with a Russian shipping syndicate. They paid him $2 million to look the other way while they stored illegal materials and properties he owned throughout New York, including the warehouse in the Bronx. Nola stared at the signature. Lawrence Sterling's name in bold black ink. The chemicals that hurt your brother weren't mine, Silas continued. They were Russian contraband stored in a building Sterling was paid to ignore. When my people took over the warehouse for our operations, we never knew what was in the back containers because Sterling never disclosed it. And when we pulled out, someone, likely Sterling's Russian contacts, burned it down to erase the evidence. So Sterling isn't just coming after you, Nola said slowly. He's covering up his own crime. Exactly, Silas said. And if we release this, he doesn't just lose his reputation. He goes to prison. Nola looked between the two men. Why are you telling me this? Why not just release it? Because, Silas said, stepping closer, the choice isn't mine. It's yours. If we go to war with Sterling, it gets ugly. People get hurt. Your name still gets dragged through the mud, just from a different angle. Or you can walk away right now, and I'll handle it quietly, but you'll never know the full truth, and you'll never be safe from him. That's not a choice, Nola said. That's a trap. Welcome to my world, Silas replied. What do you want to do? Nola closed her eyes. She thought about Ezra, alone in their apartment, waiting for her. She thought about 3 years of exhaustion and fear. She thought about Vivian's cruelty and Lawrence's threats and Silas's lies and the warehouse fire that had stolen everything. Then she opened her eyes. I want to burn his world down, she said. All of it. I want him to feel what I felt when I thought my brother was going to die. Silas smiled. It was a terrible smile, full of teeth and promises. Then let's go to war. But what none of them knew was that Vivian Sterling had just made a deal of her own, and her allies weren't millionaires or politicians. They were something far more dangerous, and they were already on their way. The war started at 3 p.m. on Christmas Day when every news outlet in New York received an anonymous tip about Lawrence Sterling's Russian connections. By 3:30, federal agents were knocking on his door. By 4 o'clock, the story had gone national. Silas watched it unfold from his penthouse, Nola standing beside him, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. How does it feel? Silas asked quietly. Like I'm becoming someone I don't recognize, Nola admitted. Is that bad? I don't know yet. Silas's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. We have a problem. Another one? Nola asked. Vivian just posted bail for her father. And she's not alone. He turned the phone toward Nola. The screen showed security footage from outside the Sterling mansion. Vivian stood on the steps, flanked by 6 men in dark suits. But these weren't lawyers or bodyguards. These were soldiers. Military posture, cold eyes, the kind of men who killed for a living. Who are they? Nola whispered. Bratva, Silas said. Russian Mafia. Vivian must have called in her father's old contacts. The older man from earlier, his name was Marlowe, Nola had learned, stepped into the room. Boss, we've got movement. 3 SUVs heading toward the Bronx. Nola's heart stopped. That's where Ezra is. She grabbed Silas's arm. They're going after my brother. Silas was already moving. Marlowe, mobilize the team. I want everyone at the Baptiste apartment in 5 minutes. Nola, stay here. Absolutely not, Nola said, grabbing her coat. That's my brother. Which is exactly why you're staying, Silas snapped. If they grab you, they have leverage. If you're here, you're safe. I don't want to be safe, Nola shouted. I want to protect him. Silas grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. I know, and I swear to you, I will bring him back. But I need you to trust me. Nola's eyes filled with tears. You lied to me. I did, Silas said, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it. But right now, I need you to let me fix this. Please. Nola stared at him, torn between fury and desperation, and finally nodded. Silas kissed her forehead, a brief, fierce gesture, and then he was gone, Marlowe on his heels. Nola stood alone in the penthouse, watching the city lights blur through her tears. 15 minutes later, She heard the gunfire. It came through the police scanner app she'd downloaded on her phone. Shots fired, 145th and Morris Avenue, multiple casualties, Nola's apartment building. She grabbed her keys and ran. The streets of the Bronx were chaos. Police sirens wailed. Neighbors poured out of buildings, pointing, shouting, recording on their phones. Nola pushed through the crowd, her breath coming in ragged gasps, and stopped dead when she saw her building. The front door was blown off its hinges. The windows on the third floor, her floor, were shattered. And in the middle of the street, Silas stood with his back to an SUV, gun in hand, blood streaming down his left arm. Across from him, Vivian Sterling crouched behind a car, screaming into her phone. "Where's my brother?" Nola shouted, sprinting toward Silas. He turned, eyes widening in horror. "Nola, get down." She didn't. She ran straight past him, into the building, up the stairs, ignoring the bullet holes in the walls and the smell of smoke. "Ezra," she screamed. "Ezra!" "Nola!" His voice, weak but alive. She burst into the apartment. Ezra was huddled in the bathroom, clutching his medical bag, tears streaming down his face. Marlowe stood guard at the door, gun trained on the hallway. "He's okay," Marlowe said. "We got here first." Nola collapsed next to her brother, pulling him into her arms, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Why are people shooting at us?" Ezra whispered. "Because I made a mistake," Nola said. "But it's over now. I promise." Downstairs, Silas had Vivian pinned against the car, his gun pressed under her chin. "Call them off," he growled. "Call them off now, or I end this." Vivian laughed, blood on her teeth. "You think you've won? My father's deal will bury you. The Bratva doesn't forgive debts, Silas. You're a dead man." "Maybe," Silas said. "But you'll die first." "Silas." Nola's voice cut through the chaos. She stood on the steps of the building, Ezra beside her, Marlowe behind them. "Let her go." Silas didn't move. "She tried to kill your brother. And if you kill her, you're no better than she is," Nola said. "Please, let the law handle it." Silas stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. Then he lowered the gun. Vivian collapsed, gasping. Within seconds, police swarmed the scene. Vivian was arrested, her Russian contacts rounded up, and the Sterling Empire officially crumbled. Silas walked over to Nola, his arm bleeding, his face exhausted. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I know," Nola replied. "But I couldn't let you fight alone." Ezra looked between them. "Who is this guy, Nola?" Nola smiled, wiping her eyes. "Someone who's going to help us start over." But as the police cars drove away and the crowd dispersed, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street, or the man inside taking photographs, or the phone call he made that would bring the final threat to their door. 3 months later, spring arrived in New York like a promise kept. The Sterling Empire had collapsed into federal indictments and frozen assets. Lawrence Sterling was awaiting trial. Vivian had taken a plea deal and disappeared into witness protection, her name a cautionary tale whispered in high society circles. And Silas Park had done something no one expected. He'd gone legitimate. Eclipse was now a fully legal operation, its back rooms cleaned out, its books transparent. Silas had divested from every criminal enterprise, paid off every debt, and walked away from the underworld with his life and his reputation intact. It cost him millions. It cost him power. But when Nola asked him why, he said simply, "Because you made me want to be someone worth trusting." Nola sat in the newly renovated office on the second floor of Eclipse, reviewing quarterly reports. She was now the official COO, her degree in business finally being used for something legal, and Ezra's medical bills were paid in full through a foundation Silas had established in her parents' names. Ezra himself was thriving. The treatment was working. He'd started high school, joined the debate team, and had even asked Nola if Silas the scary boss guy was going to be around more often. The answer was yes. Silas walked into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee and a folder. "We need to talk," he said. Nola looked up, alarmed. "That's never a good opening." "Relax," Silas said, handing her the coffee. "It's good news." Mostly. He slid the folder across the desk. Nola opened it. Inside was a legal document. A deed. To a brownstone in Brooklyn. What is this? She asked. Your new house, Silas said. 4 bedrooms, a backyard, close to Ezra's school. I bought it last month. It's in your name. Nola stared at him. Silas, I can't accept this. You can, and you will, Silas said. Because I'm tired of you and Ezra living in that apartment, and because I'm hoping you'll let me visit sometimes. Visit, Nola repeated, raising an eyebrow. Or live. Silas smiled. That depends. Are you still mad at me for the warehouse? Every single day, Nola said. But I'm also grateful you told me the truth. Eventually. I'm working on my timing, Silas said. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hand. Nola, I know I'm not the man you imagined yourself with. I know I've made mistakes that hurt you. But I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. You make me want to be better. You make me believe I can be. Nola's eyes filled with tears. Silas, let me finish, he said gently. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. I know we've only known each other for 3 months, and most of that was spent in crisis mode. But I'm asking you to let me try. Let me prove that I can be the man you and Ezra deserve. Nola looked at him, this dangerous, complicated, impossible man who'd saved her life and shattered it, and rebuilt it all in the span of 1 winter. One condition, she said. Anything. You have to come to Ezra's debate tournament next week. And you have to sit in the front row and cheer embarrassingly loud. Silas laughed, the sound filling the room with warmth. Deal. He stood up, pulling her to her feet, and kissed her. It was slow, deep, full of promises and second chances, and the kind of hope that only comes after surviving the worst and choosing to build something new. When they finally broke apart, Nola whispered, I'm still scared. Good, Silas said. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe with anyone else. Downstairs, Eclipse was filling up with the early evening crowd. The bar gleamed. The music was soft. And on the patio where Nola had once stood freezing and hopeless, flowers were blooming in planters Silas had installed, bright and defiant against the city concrete. Ezra arrived an hour later, backpack slung over his shoulder, and stopped dead when he saw Silas and Nola sitting together at the bar, laughing over something stupid. Are you two like together now? He asked suspiciously. Define together. Nola said, trying to keep a straight face. Gross, Ezra said, but he was smiling. Does this mean I can call him Silas instead of Mr. Park? You can call me whatever you want, Silas said. As long as you keep getting straight A's. Deal, Ezra said, sliding onto a bar stool. Can I have a Coke? Can you finish your homework first? Nola countered. You're worse than he is, Ezra grumbled, pulling out his textbook. Silas leaned over and whispered in Nola's ear. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Nola looked at her brother, alive and healthy. She looked at the bar that had almost destroyed her and had instead become her salvation. She looked at the man beside her, flawed and fierce and finally free. Yeah, she said. We're going to be okay. And for the first time in years, she believed it. What an incredible journey from the freezing alley to a life rebuilt from ashes. Nola's story proves that sometimes the worst nights lead to the most beautiful beginnings, and that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about who helps you stand back up. Silas wasn't just a mafia boss who walked away from power. He was a man who learned that the greatest empire you can build is the one that protects the people you love. If this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and justice and love that survives the fire, do me a favor. Smash that like button because it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear stories like this. Share this with someone who loves a good redemption arc, a powerful romance, or just needs a reminder that broken things can be made beautiful again. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next story, because trust me, we've got more emotional journeys coming that will leave you breathless. Thanks for being here, and remember, sometimes the person who saves you is the one you never saw coming.